was asked a set of questions today. I'm just going to answer them, and then I'm going to read the questions. A reference to a David Wynn Miller, Russell J. Gould promoter or fanboy, Robert Leroy Horton. Non-amazing claims he makes. He was a sergeant in the U.S. Army, working under the Department of Civil Affairs and working under Psychological Operations Command, PSYOP. He claimed to have trained U.S. Army Special Forces Green Berets. Many people have. Maybe not when they were Green Berets. So none of these are fantastical statements. And even the statement that he's a military insider could be considered non-special or non-amazing, or it's not an extraordinary claim. None of these are extraordinary. So let's get to the assertions made on his page, and I'm going to deliberately sandbag this by creating a false sense about the guy, who is, again, Robert Leroy Horton, who makes a set of claims on his channels, websites, that sort of thing. Links below in the description for something that's called, and let me scroll down to it, War Castles. War Castles is a repackaging of Sovereign Citizen Movement / Russell J. Gould and David Wynn Miller grammar Nazism. Okay, just saying. But anyway, what's the primary thrust this person has in his secondary, thrusters? Postmaster generals saved our republic in 1999 from a Luciferian cabal. Now, that's not actually really what's said, but that's some of the top film on top of the cream de crop of the crazy sounding stuff. Okay, now that we've done that, what is the assertion made? It's allusion to the idea by Russell J. Gould and David Wynn Miller that everybody in the United States needs to use completely unrelated definitions for words we use commonly so that they can change the meaning of laws and change the meaning of arguments against us when we're in court by just twisting definitions. He's a fanboy of that. Okay, first layer. Second layer, assertions about a Luciferian cabal, or the misuse of the term Postmaster General to mean something other than it is. Okay, now let's talk about a republic in 1999 being saved from something. Okay, now I'm cutting it off there. That's the worst case scenario. But does this guy have anything useful? I encourage you to go look at his website and look at his channel. Not on YouTube. Use the BitChute one. It's a lot less unstable. I'm not kidding. I'm not being mean. It's just the YouTube channel he's got has got shit flagged and crap. It's like I can't even figure out what he's saying. Okay? Some of the stuff is embedded on his page. It isn't loading. He needs to use BitChute embedded videos. So the question I was asked was, did the United States go bankrupt? Did it go through it a third time? And was that third one paid off in 1999 to, quote, the Crown of England, I'm assuming? Do I believe any of this is legitimate? And do I feel that it's just a push for a digital dollar? Now, that last part's very important because most of the people who talk up this kind of stuff also on the same page, while they talk about how we should be on the gold standard, they then talk up doing the polar opposite, Bitcoin. Bitcoin is literally a system based on having no basis for value being maintained on the face of it. Now, that's not really how Bitcoin works, but it sounds that way and it appears that way. And please remember, the people talking about gold standards and the United States going bankrupt do things based on the appearances and the facade of what they're saying. Sort of like refusing to use the correct word definition for bankruptcy. So let's cover this. Did the U.S. go bankrupt, quote unquote, in quotes, emphasis added with tildes and stuff, before 1999 at all, and is there a reference to it? And why don't people tell you what its common name is so you can research this? Because they know what you're looking it up. Did we pay off the Crown of England, apparently, for anything in 1999? Or were we required to? Was there a debt then? Now, this is something that's been retreaded, but let's start over. The actual definition for a bankruptcy, not the definition people tell you when they're talking up Bitcoin and also talking up that they want the gold standard, is any entity, person, country, business, it doesn't matter, that has debts that are larger than its assets. It's not in the black, it's in the red. That's it. That's the loosest definition. You're bankrupt, even though the word actually refers to something else. You declare bankruptcy when you do the following. Let's say I owe this much to France because we did. We did at one time. And at the time, we only had enough assets to pay half of it back. So we contact France and say, we can't give you all of this when you need it. Sorry, you didn't need it before. Now that you've gone through shit, we know you need it, but we can't give you it all back. We only have half of it. But if we give you half of it, we'll have nothing. Now, we're a country with a lot of assets, a lot of resources, and we can build up through trade enough money to give you all of it back over a longer period of time. But it's going to be at minimum 20 years. If we give you this half that we can right now, we can't do anything. We need capital, capitalism, to do so. We need to have that seed money to build it up. We can easily pay it back later, but you're betting we can do it. We want you to invest in our future, taking out futures, stocks, bonds, futures, that sort of thing. And them saying, fuck you, we need the money now. Okay, we're declaring that we are insolvent or in default to the loan. What are they going to do? Repossess Florida? Take D.C. Nobody gives a shit about D.C. Everyone will leave happily. Fuck it, let them burn it down. We did a Louisiana purchase. You know, we could do that. Do you want to do that? Reverse it? What? They can't really collect. If you're not aware of this, the U.S. government can create a debt. We don't have to cash it. Well, every American knows a certain amount from the national debt. No, actually, we don't fucking owe it. I'm not kidding about that. We do not have to pay this back. A lot of people go into absolutist mode and scream that we do. We really don't. There's no way that you, me, and the other people here have to pay this debt back. Even if it says we do. Might makes right. Come and get it. You're not going to get anything. Blood from a turnip. And that's kind of what happens when this kind of thing really does show up as happening. But did this happen in 1933 and twice in the 1970s? Here we go. The Constitution allows the federal government to print money at will. We can use that to pay off any debt, and it effectively just fucks us a little bit because then our dollar is valued less. Later on, we're allowed to just reabsorb the printed money and drive up the value of the dollar. We rarely do that, but we can. We can also change lending rates. The U.S. Treasury does that to force the economy to jack up its quality for the dollar having a stronger value. We can also do manipulation of our own financial system this way. This is how we do it currently. But have we always done it? Well, let's go into it. We have to pay off all debts. We're compelled to do so. Even if we're only paying it off a bit at a time, like some of you are doing right now because of COVID-19. Obligations must be met. A sovereign default is when a country cannot repay its debt, but that is defined in many ways. In the U.S., this can be in the form of bonds held by Americans or foreigners. So the U.S. would stop paying on bonds, stocks, or certificates. And now we get into where this comes in. There were certificates that were traded openly on international markets for gold and silver certificates before we went off the gold standard. We announced ahead of time we're switching from the gold standard. Bring in your certificates and we will pay them off at face value. But that's it. You're not getting the potential of it going up. The idea of buying those certificates was expecting them to go up. You got your money back at them, but you didn't get a profit. Well, that's considered default. They got paid, and if you didn't get paid off, the certificate was worth nothing later. There's a lot of memes about the certificates being valuable to billions of dollars later, but there was a window of time that was said no. The U.S. did effectively, but not officially, devalue its currency in 1933 because we were in the middle of an international depression. Some say the U.S. defaulted by dollar devaluation also the same way in 1971, 1979, and various other dates. The Great Depression gold standard ending was 1933. Nixon shock lines up with 1971. That's when we switched from the Bretton Woods international monetary system of exchange or methodology for solving these sorts of debts and processes to using a free-floating system where we just print money and say fuck it. And the U.S. Treasury mini default, which was just a delay in payments to some investors in 1979, is often cited. If that's your best example of us going into default or being in a bankruptcy, that's a pretty weak one. But people bring these up. Some people even cite President Roosevelt declaring the United States as bankrupt in 1933 by executive orders, and there's 4 of them listed. None of them say bankruptcy or default or anything. They just did the following. Prohibiting explicitly unauthorized export, trade, hoarding, or importing of gold without permit. Because we're going off the gold standard, and until we finished doing it, you couldn't make the gold move around. because that would be a way of manipulating or exploiting it. It admitted to a national banking emergency, and this was an international one from central banks on down and up. And none of it mentioned bankruptcy or anything similar to it, nor even in concept. It's not even by definition or by misuse of wording. Nothing even similar shows up. And people will cite these hoping you don't look them up. And if you actually read them, they just say, well, they changed it later, which has no evidence presented to explain it. We went off a gold standard, and that's all in 1933. Nixon created a problem by solving another one in 1970s. And another occurrence was just the Treasury Department fucking up. It should also be noted that the Treasury Department can change loan levels and interest rates to keep inflation under control because that's the primary purpose after a point. Bankruptcy to a gold standard fanatic or absolutist means only that the U.S. can no longer pay you in gold for your money because they're gold-obsessed people. Gold has that effect on people, and it has been mentioned since all of this. Yes, we could go back on a gold standard, but this would cause people who are obsessed with gold itself to have a weird outlet for power over the economy, which was a problem at the time. That's why we probably will never go back on the gold standard. Gold causes people to go crazy. Look at everybody on the internet. Prove me wrong. But gold standard fanatics, or gold worshippers, golden calf worshippers, will redefine going off a gold standard as being bankruptcy for the USA and then refuse to admit that's what they're referring to, even though that's what they are explicitly talking about. They equate it to some sort of satanic cabal, literally. And then they invoke conspiracy theories because batshit crazy gold rush fever affects everybody. It should be pointed out after the 1930s, we found ways to extract more gold out of the ground, which dropped its value anyway. Going back on the gold standard would mean that every dollar is worth 1/700th of an ounce of gold or something like that. That's all it would do. It wouldn't change the value. It wouldn't rescue us. See also the Philippines with gold calf worshippers. Next, the most recent state to declare default was Arkansas in 1933. Because we switched over to a fluid system because shit happens and we should acknowledge it, we haven't had to have any defaults, much less bankruptcies, occur. Is that just because we're redefining what a bankruptcy is? You could decide that. But that's also what the grammar Nazis are doing here. The quantum grammar Nazis are redefining words. They're comfortable with it. It's how they do things. I call it evil. President Gerald Ford legalized private ownership of gold coins, bars, and certificates that we could make new by an act of Congress 1974 and repealed the limitation and exclusion of gold ownership in the United States, ending the 1933 gold standard prohibition on ownership of gold. The idea was for the U.S. government to be the only one that could hoard gold and give everybody money in return and say, screw you. And also, well, there's certificates and stuff. They collected on all of them. And there were others that were allowed to stay in play afterwards because some people wanted to. There's a bunch of rumor milling about this. So here's our full question. The answer is for our government is going to pretend that they are legit, and that means both parties. Then the people will continue to pretend that they have a constitution. This is an assertion, an assumption, in my opinion. My question to you are, have you ever read or looked through the War Castle overview by Robert Horton explaining all of the stuff I talked about? And then his question again, did we go through a third bankruptcy? No, it wasn't a bankruptcy by any definition, and that word is exclusively used by people who say going off the gold standard is a bankruptcy when it's not. That's the basis for it. Did we pay off the crown in 1999? No, because there's no reference to that or explanation of what the real reason is versus what is on paper. There's not even a reference to this anywhere. And yes, I've looked this up before, and I know that there's another name for it, but the guy you're referring to doesn't explain this explicitly. We have to start with basics here. Do I believe any of it's legitimate? But then again, he's not explaining himself, so I can't determine that. So I'm referring to what is being probably referred to here. Do you feel that this is a push for a digital dollar? A lot of these people claiming we should go on a gold standard want us to do the exact opposite, Bitcoin and that sort of thing. So maybe. The reason you're asking is because I'm a good researcher. Thank you for saying so. And you say I'm fair and balanced. That's okay. And I do appreciate that we don't always agree on things, and thank you for respecting my opinions and my assertions. And again, people are misusing the dictionary words for everything all over the place in this, and it's not an evaluatable subject if we can't even use the same language. So my opinion of this guy is, tentatively, I don't agree with him. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with that.